Hello, I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York. Welcome to One to One. Each week, we address issues of timely and timeless concern with newsmakers and the journalists who report on them, with artists, scientists, educators, social scientists, government leaders, politicians. All are one to one. And today is no exception. Ann Kirschner, Dean of the City University's William E. Macaulay Honors College, has already enjoyed a most varied working life as a writer, entrepreneur, and scholar. And I would think that being Dean of the CUNY Honors Program incorporates all aspects of her career and then some. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Ann, I was telling you before the show that I remember going to the very first reception of the first group of students who were accepted into the Honors College. I guess it was back in 2001, and how exciting that seemed to be at the time. It seems that the Honors College has brought an added measure of distinction to an already impressive university. Tell me something about how the genesis of the Honors College and how it's developed since then.
Well, let's think back to that group of students you met in 2001. They were amongst the most talented high school students in New York City. And someone, maybe their guidance counselor, said to them, there's this new college in town, and it's called the Honors College of the City University of New York. And they came to hear more about it and trusted that this new program would suddenly become an important and good place for them to entrust this most valuable thing, 4 years of a college education. It was the dream of the chancellor in 2000-2001 to create an honors college that would stand for the highest academic quality at the City University of New York. And over the course of the last now 7 years, we've done our very best to realize that vision. And it's just been getting better and better.
Now, I get you started out, your first class was 189 students, and you now have, what, 1,200 students in all of these?
It's 1,200 students total. I actually just looked at the numbers for next year. We'll be admitting 367, again, of the most interesting and talented high school students.
Now, I know that the idea was to get some of the students who CUNY might have been losing to what we call the elite, colleges and universities, Ivy Leagues. Is that what has happened?
That is absolutely what's happened. And I guess it goes to the heart of what you think the mission of public higher education is. And to me, the mission of public higher education is to serve all citizens, citizens who need an extra hand with their education, as well as students who have the greatest ambitions. And the wonderful thing to me about CUNY is its range, how it can stretch to help students and to help students realize their ambitions regardless of where they are in their academic preparation. Macaulay Honors College serves the students who have terrific academic preparation and have terrific ambitions. And yes, they are students for whom many college doors are open.
Now, how hard is it to get
us?
How hard is it to get in? How many apply as compared to how many get accepted?
Oh, it's hard. I wish we had room for everyone. This year we had a big jump in applications. I guess the word's getting out that it's a great program. We had about 3,200 applications, and we will be seating a class of 367. Mm-hmm. So it's quite
1 in 10,
competitive.
basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what I know that there are a lot of perks involved. You get tuition. There's also an allowance, for
a study grant.
Tell me some of the perks that are involved.
They all have a purpose, and we do offer our students free tuition. They also have access to a $7,500 study grant, which they apply for with a proposal that says, I'd like to study in Ireland because I'm a student of Irish theater. I'd like to study in Cambridge because I'm interested in biogenetics. I'd like to study, you get the idea.
Right.
And then they gradually apply for usually almost all of that $7,500.
And they can spread that over the course of 4 years.
They can spread it over the course, right. Well, it's really 3 years because they don't use it as a freshman. They receive an Apple laptop, and that's because one of the primary tools of learning in the 21st century is digital learning. And so the Apple laptop is part of their toolkit as a Macaulay student. They have access to courses that are special courses for Macaulay students, and the core curriculum are 4 incredibly interesting seminars that all focus on the city of New York, the arts in the city, public policy in the city, science in the city, and the demographics of the city, the changing life in the city. And you might think all of this focus on New York is sort of parochial. There's a lot of problems in the world. Surely not all of them are in New York. But the truth is that more and more of the world's population does live in cities. And so by using the lens of the city, we really are addressing what are the problems of a 21st century
And these
society.
are courses and seminars that other students at CUNY are not having? These are special courses?
These are special courses. They're taught in small seminars. They're taught by some of the most distinguished faculty in New York. And the focus is on using interdisciplinary approaches to problem solving and also technology to look at how you advance learning for these incredibly talented students.
In terms of the academic emphasis of the Honors College, does it tend to be weighted heavily towards languages or science and technology or the physical sciences or social sciences? Is there a leaning?
It's a good question. We have a lot of students from Baruch, and most of the Baruch students are in fact interested in business. But our students take any one of 200 plus majors. We have a wonderful contingent of students from City College who are focused on engineering out of the marvelous departments of engineering at City College. We have students at Brooklyn, many of whom are pre-medical students. In fact, we have an astonishing number of students who are interested in medicine as a career. But the reality is they are spread across a spectrum from pre-professional students who are interested in business or pre-law or pre-med to students who are interested in English. Of course, I was an English major, so I'm enthusiastic about that, but the humanities as well. So it's really a very, very broad spectrum.
And you have your own building on West 67th Street. Now, what goes on there?
Yes, it's kind of a campus in a box. You know, you imagine what goes on in a campus.
Because the students are spread around among the senior colleges.
We are, in essence, a consortium of 7 CUNY campuses. And our students are citizens, if you will, of both of those campuses. They are Macaulay students, but then they are students at Brooklyn, Baruch, Queens, and the other campuses. They come to the Macaulay building for common events, which are held for Macaulay students. It could be a research colloquium, it could be a poetry reading, it could be a meeting of a pre-medical association. There are also classrooms there. There's space for student performances. We have a beautiful gem of a screening room, and the staff of the Honors College is housed there. So it's a wonderful central location, and this is the first year that we're open through the generosity of Bill Macaulay, who also gave us our name. It's the central meeting place of the Macaulay Honors College.
Now, but the students do they actually get their degrees from, say, Queens College or Hunter?
Yes.
Okay.
They get a degree from the campus that they are a student of, and they have a special Macaulay designation on their diploma, and they also receive a separate certificate from Macaulay Honors College. By the way, our students have to maintain a 3.5 GPA and above, and it's astonishing how many students graduate with a 3.8, 3.9. I can't imagine how hard these students work. So to maintain their standing in the college, they really they are taking an incredibly rigorous curriculum, and they do very well.
What's the graduation rate, and what happens with the students you lose? How many do you lose, and why do you lose them?
We don't lose too many. Almost all the students come back for the second year, and then the 5- and 6-year graduation rates are competitive with the finest colleges in the land. Why do students leave? Well, they might leave because they changed their major and decided that they want to go to one of the other CUNY campuses, or they might have decided the family leaves New York and they travel together with the family. Some students have difficulty with the rigor of the curriculum, but it's actually rather a small percentage.
I know one of the motivating factors behind starting the Honors College, there have been criticisms of CUNY over the years that the standards had been lowered by open admission, and one of the purpose of the Honors College and other reforms that were put into place in the last 10 years has been to raise the level of academic achievement. Has that happened and overall, and has the Honors College contributed to that?
The Honors College is a linchpin of the strategy that was put in place in 2001 to raise academic quality across all of CUNY. We're like a little tugboat, you know, we're the people out in the water first, and there are things that you can accomplish with 1,200 students that it's more difficult to accomplish with, you know, 225,000 full-time students. Right. And that to me was the genius of the Chancellor's vision, to use this small cohort as leverage, if you will, for all of CUNY. When I think about my job, I think it's my job to make sure that the 1,200 students of Macaulay get an enriching education that will become the solid foundation for success in life. That to me is a goal. But the real goal is, how do we use the Macaulay Honors College as a way to return value and help all the students of the City University of New York? And if we can use Macaulay that way, that to me is the real home run. And more we are finding ways to do that. And that to me is the most exciting thing of all.
I know, I remember talking to one of the professors or one of the deans at my undergraduate college who said that, you know, if you have a class that has, say, you know, 2 or 3 students who got, say, like 750 on the English portion of their SAT exam, it's probably no longer 750. This was the old SAT. But if you scored very high on the SAT exam, that it raised the level of discussion in that class for all of the students. And I would think, you know, I sort of acts like yeast for bread. Absolutely. And I would think that, you know, the Honors College students would serve a similar role.
Faculty tell us that. Mm-hmm. Faculty tell us that having an Honors College student in the class does elevate the level of discussion. You know, and it makes common sense. You know, you're playing tennis with a really good tennis player. Gee, you know, you sort of rise to the, right. You start to play better. And so I think there is a tremendous element of truth in that it raises everyone's game. The other thing is, you know, 3,200 students apply to Macaulay. We seat a class of 367. What happens to all the rest of them? More and more, we are finding that the students who don't find a place at Macaulay, because we can only support a small number of students, remain at CUNY, either at another honors program at one of the campuses or at a regular program at CUNY. What a wonderful thing that is. Right. Because then the more and more qualified students, the students who will just get a tremendous return out of their education, they are remaining at the City University of New York. Who are your students? I mean, what's their profile? Where do they come from? They are mostly New Yorkers. They are mostly public school graduates. About 65% of them are either immigrants themselves or first generation, which I think is a really interesting fact. About 1/3 of them are the first in their family to go to college. And they come from hundreds of high schools. Yes, they come from Bronx Science and Stuyvesant, as you would expect, but they also come from Bishop Malloy High School and from DeWitt Clinton and from Yeshiva Flatbush. So there's a very wide variety of schools that our students come from. We're going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more with Dean Ann Kirschner of CUNY's Macaulay Honors College in a moment.
Big dreams and good grades aren't enough to get into college. There are actual steps you need to take. Finding someone who can help is the first and most important. For the next steps, go to knowhowtogo.org.
Welcome back to One to One. I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York, and I'm talking with Ann Kirschner, Dean of CUNY's William E. Macaulay Honors College. So what happens to this? You've had how many graduating classes now?
We've had 4 graduating classes.
And what do what do the students do after they leave the Honors College?
Well, it looks like from our preliminary data, again, this is a very small number of graduating classes, but it looks like about 60% of them go on to graduate school, which is a very, very high percentage, and we're very proud of that. They go to the finest graduate programs in the country. You name a university, and they are there. They also go on to law school and medical school and MBA programs. So a large number of them continue with their education, and then about 40% of them enter the workforce, and they work for wonderful corporations. Many of them remain in New York, but the fact of the matter is we now have Macaulay alums all over the world. Finance in London, working in India, and working in the Far East. So the preliminary data from these first 4 classes is incredibly interesting. They really are doing very, very well.
Now, I know that I think about a year ago, the winner of the Intel Science Competition was from New York City. I believe, did this person come to the Honors College, or?
He did, and actually I think David Bauer is an interesting case in point. David had been a student at Hunter High School when he began doing research with a professor at City College. Then he won the Intel Science Award, and he could have gone anywhere in the country, but for his purposes, he wanted to continue his research at City College. So he entered City, and he has won a number of additional prizes and awards, including the extremely prestigious Truman Fellowship. David is right now in Oxford, where he's doing research on genomics, and David's a star. He's going to light up the world. So I think you have there an example of how Macaulay Honors College serves New York students, but even though they are not going away to college, they become students of the world.
Right.
And so instead of being at a lovely residential quad and living away from home, he was studying at Oxford, and actually has ended up at Oxford for the better part of this year.
So he got to the lovely residential quad after
all. He did, although he says the weather's terrible in Oxford.
Oh, really?
But,
really?
Yeah.
Now, I know that City University has also had in recent years a couple of Rhodes Scholars, a number of Truman, scholars. Were the Rhodes Scholars also in the Honors College?
No, we haven't had a Macaulay Rhodes yet. These fellowships are wonderful things, and I think they are sort of a soundbite for success. The fact of the matter is, we have hundreds of students who are successful, and you don't have to have a Rhodes to to prove that you're successful. But I think it has made a lot of people sit up and take notice. And again, part of my job, I think, is to make Macaulay a name that stands for the highest academic quality, and begins to stand for public higher education at its best.
Do you have your separate graduation ceremony?
We do.
You do?
We do. We have a convocation procession that begins at 67th Street. We leave our building with all of our graduates, and march this year to the Society for Ethical Culture on 65th Street. And our first convocation speaker way back when was Hillary Clinton, followed by Elliot Spitzer, followed by Cory Booker, and this year Peter Gelb, the general manager of the Metropolitan Opera, was our speaker.
How about expectations versus reality on the part of the students and on the part of their parents in terms of, when they get into this program?
I think we're pretty good at defining the experience of being a student at Macaulay Honors College. We actually had our first parents' reception this year at the new building, and I spoke to many of the parents who are very enthusiastic about what their students have experienced at Macaulay Honors College. We survey our students, we survey them as freshmen, we survey them over the course of their experience, and then again as seniors. And in the last survey that we did, I believe it was 90 or 92% of the students were extremely satisfied with the education they had received. Now, you know, it's a survey, who knows, you know, but students actually are sort of honest about about what their experience has been, and so I find that there's a very good match between the expectation and the reality.
They also get something called a cultural passport for the city, right? Now, what is that?
How could I have
And
left that out? And on the list of wonderful things that our students get, we have relationships with many leading cultural institutions in New York, museums and performing arts spaces and theaters. And our students get either free or substantially discounted entrance to those places.
Wow.
And they love it. In fact, our alumni are always sort of banging on our door saying, I want my cultural passport again. So.
Now, you've had a very varied career. You've taught Victorian literature at Princeton. You've developed online businesses for the NFL, created an online education company for Columbia University. What did you learn from those experiences that have been helpful to you in this job?
Wow. Well, I learned something different at all of them. You know, the NFL, interestingly, is sort of a consortium the way Macaulay Honors College is, except that in place of Lehman and City College and Hunter, we have, you know, the Giants and the Jets and the Patriots, etc. And learning how to navigate a system that is both centralized and decentralized. I think I learned a little bit about that at the NFL. I think that probably the most important lesson from all of those places is that that you build a culture for an organization, and you maintain the highest quality and a sense of integrity about that organization, and everything else flows from that. So whether you're talking about online education or the National Football League or any of the other unusual places I have been, I think it's about understanding what the quality of your work is, and remaining true to that quality.
How does one go from teaching Victorian literature to the NFL? That seems to be a big leap.
Well, I think that would take another half an
Okay,
hour,
all right.
Cheryl.
Well, very interesting.
I had a real good time there.
And another thing we're not going to be able to talk a lot about, but you are the author of a book about your mother, who was an immigrant who spent 5 years in various Nazi forced labor camps during World War II. And I'm just interested in how, and you learned fairly late in your life about your mother's history. I'm just interested in how those revelations might have affected your attitude towards your work and career.
It's an interesting question. I learned a lot when I was writing Salah's Gift, my book about what happened when my mother revealed these letters that she had received while she was a slave for 5 years. I learned a lot about identity and how you can reinvent yourself even when the world has fallen around your ears in pieces. I think I also learned a lot about the power of education and how my mother was able to arrive in the United States as a war bride in 1946, not speaking a word of English, and then could see me graduate from Princeton University. So I think that for me, part of that lesson was to be able to say to my students, you come from many different backgrounds, but you share something, which is that you've got this, you're on this rocket ship to the moon, and the rocket ship is called your education. And with that, and with your commitment and your ambition, you can do pretty much anything, and you may not even be able to imagine today what that will be. You'll surprise yourself, and it'll be wonderful.
Right, right. Now, I know that CUNY has been able to pull together, you know, a lot of the kinds of resources that were necessary to create, you know, and keep the Honors College going. But it has, each year runs up to various budgetary restraints. Have those affected you? And just what's your wish list for the Honors College going forward?
My wish list. I think that the Honors College, like the City University of New York as a whole, needs to build an endowment so that we have a pathway to the future that is assured.
Does it have an endowment right now?
It has a small endowment right now, and you know, things like a study grant, which is an incredibly important component of the Macaulay student experience at $7,500 a student. It's expensive,
right?
And it's not about, you know, jewelry making in Tuscany. It's really about being a global citizen of the 21st century world. And so funding those things can really be quite a challenge. We have an extraordinarily committed group of funders. William Macaulay's generosity, I think, sort of woke up a lot of people to what the City University could accomplish. People like Cy Sternberg at New York Life, who saw that the Macaulay Honors College could be a return to the CUNY that he remembered as a student at City College. The Goldsmith Foundation, which funds a very important program for us. The Mellon Foundation. I'm sort of sorry to start down the path of funders, lest I leave, and I know I will, important people off. The fact of the matter is that public higher education is a shared commitment of the state, of our country, and also of private philanthropy these days. And so we do our best to not only maintain our public funding, but also to explain to private philanthropists what the value of this is. You know, you can walk into any business in New York, any store, any company, any trading floor, and if you cast a net, you would find something like 50 or 60% of the people who are working there have been touched by the City University of New York in some way. The workforce of New York is CUNY.
Right.
And so if you believe in the future of that workforce, you've got to support CUNY.
So you need more support for these kinds of people.
Absolutely.
For what is obviously a very successful program and a very worthwhile thing for the city and for the university.
Thank you.
We're out of time, but I want to thank Dean Ann Kirschner of CUNY's William E. Macaulay Honors College for joining me, and for the City University of New York and One to One, I'm Sheryl McCarthy.